Hello everyone, this is Sam, the designer behind Scribble's Crochet Corner. Today I am so excited to share with you this new free pattern tutorial for the mini sunflower buddy. This is a perfect, easy, and quick fall make, so I hope that you have some time this fall to make a cute little sunflower buddy. But let's go ahead and get started. To make the mini sunflower buddy, you will need a worsted weight or size 4 yarn. I used Premier Basic Worsted yarn in the colors buff, leaf, mahogany, mustard, and rose. You will only need about 1 skein each. You will also need a 3.75mm crochet hook, black crochet thread, polyester fiberfill stuffing, scissors, a set of 14mm safety eyes, stitch markers, a yarn needle, and two 12-inch white pipe cleaners. The petal stitch will not apply until later in the pattern, but I wanted to include this slide in case you would like to potentially screenshot this slide or write down the stitch instructions for when we reach the petal instruction portion of the pattern. You will need the petal stitch instructions to crochet 1 petal for each of the sunflower's petal once we reach that portion of the pattern, which I can reference this slide again later once we reach that petal portion of the pattern, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that you may want to save this stitch for later. Also, I just wanted to give you a heads up that the pot and soil portion of this pattern are reused video from the Mini Plant Buddy pattern. For the pot from the Mini Sunflower Buddy, I used the color Buff from Premier Basic Worsted yarn. First, we will be starting with crocheting the pot. With white yarn and your crochet hook, 6 single crochet in a magic ring. If you have never crocheted a magic ring before, I do have a tutorial on my YouTube channel which I can link to above. For round 2, single crochet increase in each stitch around. You will have 12 stitches after completing this round. Just to note here, using stitch markers is a great tool for marking the beginning of each round. I find that it makes crocheting in the round much easier when you know where you're starting and stopping at the end of each round. For round 3, you are going to 1 single crochet, then increase, repeating this 6 times around. You will finish this round with 18 stitches. For round 4, first 1 single crochet, then increase, Then crochet 2 single crochets and then an increase. Repeat this sequence for a total of 5 times. Finish the round with 1 single crochet. You should now have 24 total stitches. For round 5, 3 single crochet and then increase, repeating this 6 times around. You should finish this round with 30 total stitches. For round 6, begin with 2 single crochets and then an increase. Then crochet 4 single crochets and then an increase, repeating this sequence 5 times around. You will then finish this round with 2 single crochets. You should have a total of 36 stitches at the end of this round. For round 7, 5 single crochets and then an increase, repeating this sequence 6 times around. At the completion of this round, you should have a total of 42 stitches. We have now completed the bottom portion of our pot. We will now move on to the sides. For round 8 of the pot, we will be crocheting in the back loops of our last round. To crochet in the back loops, you will be crocheting in the loops farthest away from your hook. Crochet a single crochet in each back loop only stitch around. You should have a total of 42 stitches at the completion of this round. For rounds 9 through 18, you will be crocheting a single crochet in each stitch around. You will have a total of 42 stitches at the completion of each round for a total of 10 rounds. I'm going to crochet the first round with you all, and then I will take a break and come back once you've completed all 10 rounds. At this point, you should have completed round 18 of your pot. We are now going to move on to round 19, which we will be crocheting in the front loops for this entire round, which means you will be crocheting in the loop closest to your hook. And I'm going to pause here just for a little tip. I am going to place a stitch marker in the first back loop only stitch from round 19. This indicates where the soil will start at a later step. You can now continue crocheting your single crochets in the front loops of each of the stitches. At the completion of this round, you will have a total of 42 stitches. For round 20, we will be crocheting in the back loops again. And again, this means that we will be crocheting in the loop farthest from your hook. You will crochet a single crochet in each of the back loops all the way around. You will complete this round for a total of 42 stitches. For round 21, single crochet in each stitch around. You will complete this round with 42 stitches. Once you have completed round 21, you can now fasten off your yarn. And we will be using the invisible stitch to fasten off. To complete an invisible fasten off, first pull the yarn tail through the last stitch. Then thread the tail onto a yarn needle. Skip the first stitch and insert the needle from back to front under both loops of the next stitch. Pull the yarn through. Insert the yarn needle in the back loop of the last stitch in the round. Pull gently on the yarn tail until it mimics the size of the other stitches. Now you can weave in your end. I find it easiest to weave your tail into the inside of the pot. We will be stuffing our pot later, so that tail will be easily hidden inside. Hooray! So our pot is now done. We are now going to move on to our facial features for our plant buddy. Starting with our safety eyes, you will need two 14mm safety eyes as mentioned previously. We will be inserting these eyes at round 14 to 15 of the pot, about 4 to 5 stitches apart. Make sure you are checking placement of your safety eyes before securing the backs onto your eyes. Next, using some black crochet thread and your yarn needle, we will embroider a mouth between rounds 12 to 14, making sure they're centered between and just below the eyes. First, insert your needle from inside your pot, pulling through the stitch, about one stitch over from your eye, and then back through in the same row, about one stitch over from your other eye. You should have about 3 stitches in between each point of the mouth. You will then insert your needle back through the inside of your pot in about one row down from those first 2 points. Make sure that the needle is centered between those 2 points on your mouth, pulling it tightly, making sure that the thread is over the initial mouth shape that you made, and then back through that same stitch, pulling tightly. Before fastening off your crochet thread, we are going to embroider our eyebrows. We will be embroidering the eyebrows between round 17 and 18 at a slight angle and above each eye. First, insert your yarn needle from inside the pot in about 2 rows up from the eye, and then count about 2 stitches to the right, inserting your needle back through the stitch and inside the pot. We will now move on to the next eyebrow, repeating this same technique, but just on the opposite eye. Here I'm just going to make sure that my eyebrows are lined up how I would like them to look before I fasten off my crochet thread. So I think that these look pretty good to me. They look even. I'm going to go ahead and fasten off my crochet thread and tie it off inside the pot. The last facial feature we are going to add to our pot is some blush. With a small amount of light mauve yarn and your yarn needle, we're going to embroider our blush between rounds 12 to 13 under each eye. First, insert your yarn needle from inside your pot, about 1 row down from your right eye. Pull your yarn through and count about 1 stitch over to the right, pulling the yarn back through the pot. We are then going to repeat this same technique with our other eye. Make sure your blush looks even before fastening off, and then once it looks good, go ahead and fasten off your yarn and tie off inside the pot. You have now finished embroidering your facial features. We will now move on to crocheting the soil. When crocheting the soil, I find that it is easiest to flip down the top lip of the pot, exposing round 19's back loops that we will be crocheting the soil in. We are going to start crocheting our soil where we placed our stitch marker back when we crocheted the pot. I'm going to insert my hook here just to mark the place of where I'm starting my soil. With your mahogany yarn, you will first join with a slip stitch to the first back loop only stitch from round 19 of the pot. You will then chain 1, and 1 single crochet in the same stitch as join. You will now continue crocheting a single crochet in each back loop only stitch. After the completion of this round, you will have a total of 42 stitches. For round 2, you will crochet 5 single crochets and then an invisible decrease, repeating the same sequence 6 times. At the completion of this round, you should have a total of 36 stitches. For round 3, you will first crochet 2 single crochets and then an invisible decrease. Then crochet 4 single crochets and an invisible decrease, repeating this sequence 5 times around. Finish crocheting this round with 2 single crochets. At the completion of this round, you should have a total of 30 stitches. For round 4, crochet 3 single crochets and then an invisible decrease, repeating this sequence 6 times around. At the completion of this round, you should have a total of 24 stitches. We are now going to pause crocheting here to start stuffing our pot. Taking small pieces of polyfill stuffing, begin stuffing your pot. I like to stuff my stuffing from the outside in. I find that this prevents lumps and bumps on your finished creation and stuffs it a little bit more evenly. We will now continue on to round 5 of the soil. First, we will crochet one single crochet and then an invisible decrease. Then crochet 2 single crochets and an invisible decrease, repeating this same sequence 5 times around. We'll then finish off this round with one single crochet. At the completion of this round, you should have a total of 18 stitches. For round 6, crochet one single crochet and then an invisible decrease, repeating this same sequence 6 times around. At the completion of this round, you should have a total of 12 stitches. For round 7, crochet an invisible decrease, repeating this same stitch 6 times around. At the completion of this round, you should have a total of 6 stitches. Change the color to leaf in the last stitch of round 7. You have now finished crocheting the soil. You will now move on to crocheting your stem. For the stem, with leaf yarn, crochet 6 single crochets in the front loops of the previous round. You will have a total of 6 stitches at the completion of this round. Again, you will be crocheting this round in the front loop only of the previous round. You can now fasten off the mahogany yarn, and I like to tie off the 2 yarn tails and hide them inside the pot. I find that this is easiest. For rounds 2 through 11, you will be crocheting 6 single crochets. This will be a total of 10 rounds. At the completion of each round, you should have a total of 6 stitches. I will go ahead and start round 2, and then I will meet you back after you have completed round 11. For round 12, we will be crocheting in the front loops only of the previous round. You will be increasing in each stitch around. So work in the front loops of the previous stitch, increasing in each of the front loops. At the completion of this round, you should have a total of 12 stitches. For round 13, you will first one single crochet, and then increase, repeating this same sequence 6 times around. At the completion of this round, you should have a total of 18 stitches. For round 14, you will first one single crochet, and then increase, next 2 single crochets, and then increase, repeating this same sequence 5 times around. You will finish this round with 1 single crochet. At the completion of this round, you should have a total of 24 stitches. For round 15, first 3 single crochet, and then increase, repeating this same sequence 6 times around. At the completion of this round, you should have a total of 30 stitches. Once you reach the last increase, change the color to mahogany in the last stitch of the round. Leave the stem unstuffed. Next, fold 2 white pipe cleaners in half and insert into the opening at the top of the stem. Push the pipe cleaners through the stem until there is only a small amount showing outside of the stem. Once you have pushed the pipe cleaners all the way through the stem, I like to flatten out the top so that way the pointy end is not sticking out of the center of your flower. These pipe cleaners will help make your stem a lot more sturdy and bendy. Next, we will continue on to the center of the sunflower. With mahogany, for round 1 you will be crocheting in the back loops only of the previous round. You will be crocheting a single crochet in each stitch around, and at the completion of this round, you should have a total of 30 stitches. Again, make sure that you are crocheting this round in the back loops only. After you have finished round 1, you can go ahead and fasten off the leaf color yarn and weave in the ends. I find it easiest to just tie off the yarn tails and hide them in the center of the flower. For round 2, we will be continuing to crochet in the back loops only of the previous round. You will start with 3 single crochets, and then an invisible decrease, repeating the same sequence 6 times around. And just to mention this again, make sure that you are crocheting all of the stitches in the back loops only, making sure that you are crocheting those invisible decreases also only in the back loops. At the completion of this round, you should have a total of 24 stitches. At the completion of round 2, you should have a total of 2 rows that have front loops that will be used later for the petals. For round 3, you will first start with a single crochet, and then an invisible decrease, then 2 single crochets, and then another invisible decrease. You will repeat that sequence of 2 single crochets and an invisible decrease 5 times around. To finish this round, you will 1 single crochet. At the completion of this round, you should have a total of 18 stitches. For round 4, you will first 1 single crochet, and then invisible decrease, repeating the same sequence 6 times around. At the completion of this round, you should have a total of 12 stitches. You can now pause here because we will start stuffing the center of our flower. Taking small pieces of fiberfill stuffing, stuff the center of your flower from the outside in. Make sure to stuff the center of the flower firmly. For round 5, you will invisible decrease 6 times around. At the completion of this round, you should have a total of 6 stitches. After completing round 5, if you need to, you can finish stuffing here. I think that mine is pretty well stuffed, so I'm going to go ahead and fasten off. We'll leave about a 6-inch or 15-centimeter tail for closing. Finish the center of the flower by weaving the tail through the front loops only of the remaining 6 stitches. You will then pull tight to close and weave in the end. You have now completed the center of the sunflower. We will now be moving on to crocheting the petal portion of this pattern. And I almost forgot, you can go ahead and flip up the lip of your pot. As mentioned previously, we will be crocheting the petals in the front loops left over from rounds 1 and 2 of the center of the soil. We will be starting round 1 of the petals in the last front loop only stitch from round 2, and we'll be completing round 2 of the petals in the first front loop only stitch from round 1. If you just want to make sure that you are starting and stopping in the correct stitches, I suggest placing stitch markers in those 2 front loop only stitches. With mustard, for round 1, you will be crocheting a slip stitch in the last front loop only stitch from round 2 of the center of the sunflower. Continuing with round 1, in the same stitch as the join, first chain 2, then double crochet, and then treble crochet. Still continuing with round 1, chain 2, and then 1 slip stitch in the second chain from your hook. In the next stitch, 1 treble crochet, 1 double crochet, chain 2, and then 1 slip stitch. You will then 1 slip stitch in each of the next 2 stitches. I am now going to pause here to give a little reminder on the petal stitch instructions. If you haven't already, take a screenshot of this or write it down because you're going to need this for the next portion of the pattern. Again, we are going to be still continuing with round 1. You will crochet 1 petal. 1 petal consists of chain 2, 1 double crochet, and then 1 treble crochet in the same stitch. Then chain 2, 1 slip stitch in the second chain from your hook. Then in the next stitch, 1 treble crochet, 1 double crochet, chain 2, and then 1 slip stitch in the same stitch. You will then 1 slip stitch in each of the next 2 stitches. You will be repeating this sequence 8 times around. After completing that sequence 8 times around, we will be finishing round 1 with 1 petal and then 1 slip stitch in the last stitch. At the completion of this round, you should have a total of 10 petals. We are now ready to start round 2 of our sunflower petals. We are going to continue in the last front loop only stitch from round 1 of the center of the soil with just 1 slip stitch. We will then be continuing round 2 with 1 petal, and then a single crochet, and then a slip stitch. You will be repeating this same sequence 9 times around. After you have completed that sequence 9 times around, you will then finish round 2 with 1 petal and then 1 slip stitch in the last stitch. At the completion of this round, you should have a total of 10 petals. You can now fasten off and weave in your ends. After completing the petal portion of the pattern, you should have a total of 20 petals. You may need to flatten out your petals and shape them a little bit. You have now completed the petal portion of the pattern. We will now move on to crocheting the leaves. With the leaf color yarn, chain 7, starting in the second chain from your hook, 1 slip stitch, 1 single crochet, 2 half double crochets, and then 2 single crochets. Continuing to the opposite side of the foundation chain, 2 single crochets, 2 half double crochets, 1 single crochet, and then 1 slip stitch. At the completion of this round, you should have a total of 12 stitches. Next, you can fasten off, leaving about an 8-inch or 20-centimeter tail for sewing. You will need to crochet 2 of these leaves. Then, taking your yarn needle and your yarn tail, weave the yarn tail from the top of the leaf to the bottom of the leaf. You will then have 2 yarn tails at the bottom of your leaf. After you have finished crocheting both of your leaves, you are now ready to assemble your mini sunflower buddy. Using your yarn tails from the leaf and your yarn needle, you will be sewing each leaf to either side of the stem. You will be sewing the first leaf to round 1 of the stem and the second leaf to rounds 5 to 6 of the stem. I like to sew the second leaf at a slight angle upward to try and match the same angle as the first leaf that we sewed on. Once you have finished sewing on the leaves, weave in the ends and hide the yarn tails inside the pot. You may have to reshape your petals and make sure to bend the stem so that the flower portion is facing forward. You now have completed your mini sunflower buddy. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and you had just as much fun crocheting your mini sunflower buddy as I had designing it. If you crocheted a mini sunflower buddy, I would love to see it, so make sure to tag me in any of your creations. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you would like to see more free and paid patterns, you can visit my website at www.squibblescrochetcorner.com. Have a great week full of fall fun and happy crocheting. Bye, everyone.